to growth, alongside the esteemed panelists with me today who have shaped the fintech space in Egypt. Let me introduce you to our panelists. We have Ahmed Wadi, the founder and CEO at Moneyfellows. Myself, Zubair Malatir, Managing Director for Flatix Labs Cairo. The CEO at EFG EV, and Tariq Ibrahim, who's a principal consultant at the FRA. To my panelists. So this is for everyone to meet each other. So let me start with you. Ahmed, could you please tell us what you do and what Moneyfellows is, just briefly?
Yes, sure. So hi, everyone. Thank you for inviting us to this webinar. So Moneyfellows is basically a group lending and saving platform, digitizing the very traditional and cultural concept, which is known as ROSCAs, Rotating Savings and Credit Associations, but we call it here, we know it as Al-Jam'iyya, which is extremely common across so many different social classes in Egypt. We took this model from the offline world because we've identified a few different pain points in the offline model, which is extremely limited to people's own social graph, people who are geographically close to each other, and managing it is extremely difficult. So what we did is we digitized this model to eliminate all those pain points and hassles, and to make it much more convenient and scalable.
Thank you, Ahmed. Mahmoud Nashrati, can I ask you please to go next?
Yes, please go ahead.
Zuhairi or Nasharti?
Nasharti, please.
Okay. So I'm heading the part of the payment, the mobile payment and the acceptance or digital acceptance in Bank Misr. And especially for the Bank Misr strategically and due to the digitalization that is coming in the market, we're always looking for the fintech to partner with them where we can grow the business and pushing the business of the digitalization inside Egypt. So this is it.
Thank you, Mahmoud. Zuhairi?
Thank you everyone for hosting me. I'm Mahmoud Zuhairi. I'm the CEO of EFG Fintech. EFG Fintech, as I'd like to call it, is Egypt's first fintech-focused investment company. We were established in late 2017, became fully operational in early 2018. It's a joint venture between EFG and NAS, one of the largest investment banks in the region, and specifically it's NBFI arm or non-banking financial services arm, EFG and NAS Finance, and Egypt Ventures, which is a VC fund backed by the government. We do invest in startups through our accelerated program, in the pre-seed startups through our accelerated program. Plus, we have our VC arm where we do direct investment to cater for a certain gap we found in the market. It's what I call the post-acceleration P-Series A funding gap. When you have amazing numbers, you're growing, you're just big for accelerators, too small for VCs, and too risky for banks. This is where we like to step in. So far, we have like 20 portfolios with fintech startups in our portfolio. 13 of them are graduates for our accelerated program, and the 7 are direct investment.
Thank you, Zuhairi. Hello, Tariq. Could I please ask you to go next? You're on mute.
Sure. Hello, everybody. This is Tariq Ibrahim. I'm a principal consultant for the chairman of the Financial Regulatory Authority. I've been with the FRA for over a couple of years now. responsible for their technology programs, business transformation using technology. In that is included the fintech and the use of fintech laws and adjustment in regulations that may be necessary in order to accommodate the new trends and the new startups. We have the FRA has a memorandum of understanding with the Central Bank of Egypt that and as well as the NTRA and the Money Laundering Control Unit, or the AML CFT control unit in Egypt. The four regulators, we all also cooperate in general in Fintech Egypt under the Fintech Egypt umbrella. Over the last few quarters, we've been launched the program to listen to some of the startups and financial services, with our focus in particular being non-banking financial services, in order to assess their business and operational models and see what the regulator can do as a facilitator for these efforts.
Thank you very much for it. Last but not least, hi Henny.
Hi everyone. Apologies, I'm a bit late, but I'll make my introduction quick. I'm Henny Sumboti. I'm founder and managing director of Sawari Ventures. It's simple. What we do is very simple. We like to invest in high growth companies in Egypt, Morocco, and Tunisia. A big part of what we're focusing on these days is the fintech, our fintech companies, and we'd like to hear from you if you have any ideas and require assistance to grow, capital and otherwise. And I'm very pleased to be around people from the industry, fellow investors and entrepreneurs and regulators, and obviously one of the largest banks in Egypt in the case of Bank Masr. So it's a great set of it's a great panel. So let's begin. Thank you for having me.
Thank you very much, Henny.
Thank you very much, Henny.
So today's agenda, we've had our introductions. We're going to start with a panel discussion now. And right before the Q&As, I'll be running a very simple survey. You'll find a poll popping up on everyone's screen. If I could please ask you to take a minute just to complete it. So we'll spend about 25 to 30 minutes on our panel discussion, and then we'll leave the rest for questions from the audience. I please encourage everyone attending to ask questions all along, and we'll try and address them all. So, Ahmed, I'd like to ask you, you started Moneyfellows in 2016. Can you please tell us more about the journey and the challenges you faced from a regulations point of view and an operational point of view as well?
Wadi, are you still there?
Yeah, sorry, I lost you guys. The network was unstable, but I hear you now. Sorry, Albert.
Would you like me to repeat?
I heard until 2016.
Okay, great. So you started Moneyfellows. Can you tell us more about your actual journey and the challenges that you faced from an operational and a regulations point of view?
Sure. Yeah, so we've been, I mean, every step in the journey has been there was a lot of key challenges that we were facing at every stage in our journey. So I think initially, regulatory part, I think this wasn't the biggest challenge we had back then, because we wanted to just, at least validate the concept, validate the product, solution, and so on. but this didn't mean that we haven't seek the regulatory, so we haven't explored the regulatory environment in general, and that's when we started knocking the doors of the regulators, just to see, and get a sense of where we are and what will be needed to be done with that as well. So there wasn't enough regulations for fintech, to be honest, back in the days when we first started. It wasn't very clear. And I think we've worked a lot with the regulators, and I think now things are extremely different. There are no new laws that regulate fintechs, regulate gray companies that works in the gray area in general and hadn't been regulated yet. So that's a regulatory challenge, I think, that we passed through, and I think now is the time that we're actually able to see like real progress when it comes to the regulatory environment in general for fintech companies in Egypt.
Excellent. Henny, I'd like to ask you a question. So you see a lot of startups and you've made many investments. What do you see that's lacking which hinders fintechs to operate from different points of view, from a regulatory point of view, or also from an operational point of view in our market here? Sorry, Henny, you're on mute.
I never look at it like this. It's hindrance is a word that, the flip side of it is opportunity, right? So I think, honestly, right? I mean, I think the regulators are trying to grapple with competing demands of existing institutions, whether they be banks or insurance companies, and also the demands of the entrepreneurs. It's not an enviable position. They have to balance certain things. The entrepreneurs, they're still, I mean, it's still in its infancy, even like 5 or 6 years. A company that's 5 or 6 years old, that's very, very hard to find in the fintech world. They're mostly less than 5 years old in this part of in Egypt, the bulk of them. So they still have a lot to learn about how the financial system really works. But I think the key thing is consumer adoption. I think that's the main thing we're all trying to tap into. And it's happening. And what you're going to see is an explosion in the next 2 to 3 years, where consumer adoption hits a critical mass, where the regulators find the balance between the incumbents and the new companies, and the existing and the entrepreneurs themselves and the existing financial institutions find some sort of working arrangement. So bits and pieces are coming together, and that's where we see the opportunity. There is going to be a sort of inflection point or explosion in all of these things over the next 2 to 3 years, and that's what we're looking into.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Henny. So Mahmoud al-Nasharti, what other services do you like would Banca Misr be able to offer to fintech and not fintech startups? Do you have any challenges to be able to offer these different services?
Well, actually, because thanks for the question. One of the questions that I'm currently receiving is the challenges of the digital bank or the digital services that's currently in the market. I guess the big challenge is the adoption of the consumer for these digital services and understanding of what does it mean fintech and what type of features that they are providing and the easiness that the fintech or the digital service that will be providing for the consumer. On the regulation level, I guess due to the CBE direction and the financial inclusion and all the regulators currently are trying to accommodate all the fintechs, I guess it's not currently a challenge. It's the challenge that we can talk about is the adoption of the consumer. So this is it.
Excellent. I mean, and speaking of digital banks, we just got a question from the audience, and I encourage the audience to keep the questions coming in, please. The question is, challenger banks, neobanks, digital banks in Egypt, do we feel that there's an opportunity for that in terms of customer readiness?
It's a good question. I guess the adoption of the smartphone in the Egyptian market is making much more easier for the digital bank to be launched in Egypt. I'm not sure if we'll have big adoption from the consumer level, but having, as I said, the smartphones, having the people that they are much more into the technology, the evolution of the technology inside the Egyptian market, I guess this will make it happen. Nonetheless, still the people would remain wants to go for special branches to keep their wealth, to deal with the customer service, etc. But again, it will happen in Egypt.
Okay. Albert, Mahmoud, I have a question for you at the end about Bank Misr, specifically digital banking, but we'll keep that till the end. Bank Misr, digital banking, plans, so on and so forth. We can talk that about the end. But let's not forget to talk about that, because that's the most interesting thing that's happening in this country right now in fintech.
We'll make note of that.
Yes.
Zuhairi, I have a question for you. So you come across many fintech startups. So where do you see the biggest opportunity or room for innovation in our market?
Honestly, I would say when we first started 3 years ago, most of the startups have been centered around payment facilitation, and payment aggregation. Now, fast forward 3 years, actually, we've been seeing a lot of different verticals, and I would give the credit to that to people like Moneyfellows and even Values who introduce different or new innovation and sort of pave the way. So I would say we're moving past the first wave of fintech, as I call it, when it started out payment and payment aggregation competitive platform, to other things. In general, if you talk about what led to the rise of fintech as an industry, you can group down the factors to 3 factors actually, like advancement in technology and having affordable infrastructure and so forth. Like Hani said before, the adoption of the new generation when it comes to handling their finances, people are more open now to adopt technology and so forth. And the third part, I would say, having proactive regulators that are willing to embrace innovation without compromising their current financial systems. And actually, I see those 3 elements in Egypt, specifically over the past 3 years, a lot has happened. Now there are different products when it comes to lending, such as payroll lending, for example. People are looking more into the non-banking financial services that are based on fintech, like factoring product, leasing products, and so forth. We're seeing a rise of that as well. I guess the more that you leave digital footprint behind, you are able to offer products tailored to these needs. You get to establish more of the creditworthiness of the end user as you have already all the data requirements. In general, I would say over the past 10 years in Egypt, we have the right infrastructure in place. Yes, there are still some cracks or some gaps that we have to fill, whether by deploying fintech or other solutions. But I would say the enablement phase is sort of done. Over the next 5 years or something, it's what I call more the activation phase, where we'll see more use cases, new solutions based on the effort that has happened in the past. So like I was saying, yes, at first it was all centered on payments and so forth. Now we're seeing more of a RAC tax, digital identity verification, different sort of lending, whether it's SME lending, payroll lending, different products like factoring and leasing and so forth, actually, and a move to the non-banking side of it.
Great. And do you feel that there's an infrastructure and enough help for fintechs to thrive the way you just mentioned?
Again, I would say that over the past 4 or 3 years, a lot has happened different when it comes to the regulatory side, whether on the central bank side or the FRA side as well. a lot of laws allowing for different interoperabilities, whether mobile wallets, whether ACHs or other sort of stuff. So I would say the environment is yes, it's not perfect yet. No one could claim so, but this is what usually happens. Innovation will always be faster than the regulation. But I would say a lot has happened over the last 3 or 4 years that the next 5 years would be very different to fintech startups in Egypt.
Excellent. Thank you, Zuhairi. So the FRA has done a lot of work over the past decade to help financial and non-financial service providers. Can you tell us more how things have changed over the past decade?
Okay, I'm not sure if I can talk firsthand about what happened in the last decade, but at least in the last few years, there's been a lot of action and coordination, recognition of the forces of change that are happening really on the ground. And like my fellow panelists, everybody recognizes the main factors or elements that are enabling the inclusion of technology in everything is changing the nature and the dynamic of the services and the financial products being offered, and even the transactions and the exchanges and how it's exchanged. And the regulators are catching up, and this is widely recognized in the efforts that are being made by the regulators, as well as the new laws. The CBE just launched a new law for the with a big section about digital banking services, and the evolution of the paytech in particular as a component of fundamental component enabler in the fintech in general is also for us a fundamental infrastructure component and enabler for other more what I would categorize as other services, non-banking financial or banking financial services. At the end of the day, payment technology is going to serve, is going to be the common factor, even for non-banking services. We talk about e-commerce, everybody needs payment technologies in general. What we've seen most recently is an approach that the regulator has been taking, not only in looking to reform their laws, but also assessing what is currently happening and seeing if there is, it's all about the risk. What is the risk that is posed, either on the new players or the consumers or the customers of these fintech companies? And we're trying to balance the intervention or the need to intervention of the new laws with what's going on in the market. So as more and more fintech players in a particular segment probably start to enter the game, and as more and more issues or problems or conflicts arise, the need for the regulation becomes higher. Quite honestly, I would have to say that over the last at least 18 months or so, most of the fintech companies that I've seen so far that we've analyzed, their business model is they have proper internal governance. They're using proper principles. I wouldn't say they don't need any regulations, but they are sort of self-regulated, either through their shareholders, stakeholders. Most of them are well run. What we're looking for is where the highest risks is going to be, and in which segments or specializations. The ROSCA is one segment we looked at. The crowdfunding is another segment that we'll be looking at, and they are at the forefront of our radar screen at this point in time.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Tariq. I'd like to run just a very quick survey right now. So to all our attendees, if you could please just take 30 seconds just to fill in the poll. You should all see it pop up on your screen now. Thank you. So we have quite a few questions from the audience, which I'd like to address, please. So someone's asking, can we have a clear view of who's the main regulator of fintechs at the moment? Is it the FRA after the new law coming in soon? Is it the central bank? Or is it still a gray area?
It's a shame we don't have someone from the central bank. Astara, you can talk on both behalves.
Sure. Let me
talk about the history and what you know for sure you have to regulate, what they know for sure you have to regulate, and what the gray areas that are between you.
Absolutely. Let me just preface by saying that I'm going to put a disclaimer. Some of what I'm going to say may be a personal opinion, and the FRA opinion may be the FRA opinion. I'm gonna be joining here, not just as a technologist. Okay, so I'll give you my opinion.
That's good enough for us.
In general, we've been having a lot of discussions about some of the fintech areas and whether they fall under the jurisdiction of the banking regulator, who's the CBE, or the non-banking regulator, who is, of course, the FRA. Quite honestly, there are some things that are very clearly defined. Their jurisdiction, it's been settled. And there are some others that are not so far, quite honestly. But this doesn't mean that we cannot cooperate together. I mean, at the end of the day, if there is a joint jurisdiction, or if there is something that that should not discourage people. Let me just preface by saying that, or fintechs. Don't worry about whether you're properly classified under one regulator or you end up being regulated by both, because there's a lot of work in the background between both regulators to make sure that even the things that are shared or in common, we have similar strategies. So I'll give you one specific example that I know is going to be common for all, and we've recognized at the get-go, and we're doing a lot of efforts in this area, which is the digital onboarding. When we talk about digital onboarding and KYC, it really doesn't make much difference whether at the end of the day this particular person is going to be looking for a banking financial service or a non-banking financial service. The steps are all going to be the same. The challenges of the onboarding and getting the consent of the customer for whatever rights and obligations should be clarified. All these challenges are going to be the same. So whatever is going to be in place to regulate these aspects, it will serve all of us. At this point in time, I believe that crowdfunding has been very clearly defined to be part of or under the umbrella of the non-banking financial services. All the paytech and the digital banking are, of course, and anything that is related to the currency exchange and the currency related services. This is definitely clear-cut by law under the central bank jurisdiction. Quite honestly, the areas which is still gray are when we're doing a lot of work trying to clarify that. ROSCA, for example, because as you know, the business model is half of it is lending and half of it is saving. So depending on where you are in the rotation, so it's a mix of both. It's a hybrid world. So there is an argument for both sides whether this is something that falls under whose jurisdiction. My personal opinion is the current laws, unless they changed, is services that are offered by banks, okay, are regulated by the Central Bank of Egypt. Services that are offered by alternate financing institutions that are going to may potentially compete with the bank doesn't make them banks. So that's my personal argument. It may not be the official response. So I see the ROSCA, I see the peer-to-peer lending, I see these as potential services that are categorized under non-banking financial services. Yet we are still in the process of coordinating and discussing with our fellow brethren in the Central Bank of Egypt as we are resolving these gray areas. Maybe the peer-to-peer lending in particular is not one of the most popular models. Right now, crowdfunding and ROSCA are becoming more prevalent because on the ground they there's a lot of startups or fintechs trying to get there. So hopefully this gives you a high-level overview of what has been clearly defined under the jurisdiction of the non-bank or the FRA and what's under the CB from a regulator, and the fact that there is coordination. Hopefully people should not worry much about who will they end up being regulated by, whether it's one, the other, or both. There's a lot of coordination between both of us.
Thank you, Tore. You mentioned E-KYC, and we have a question regarding that as well. I don't know if you could answer it. It says, when can we see regulations for E-KYC and online customer onboarding for financial services such as bank account opening?
At this point in time, from a legal standpoint, the only thing that is recognized is the use of digital signature laws to allow a person to sign or effectively implement a signature or acceptance of terms and conditions on either anything from a registration form to execution an order or a loan, or even for the insurance policy or anything of that nature. It's all about terms and conditions on a financial contract, and the signature or the consent of the consumers or the on both parties. The only thing right now that is legal is the digital signature law, and we have seen that this is a challenge, especially when it comes to the area of the financial inclusion. As we are introducing more and more people, the cost of the use of digital signature is becoming an issue. And we've been working with ITIDA and some of the other government and regulatory agencies in order to look for potential ways to reduce that. That's from one side of what's currently under the regulations. At the other hand, what we're looking for is not all consents or signatures or agreements are of the same level of consequence. So that some of the consequence of the agreements may not need this level of high authentication and digital signature and physical tokens. So we are looking to introduce in our new non-banking financial services fintech law some articles that is going to allow us to give the right for the digital onboarding process to happen without the actual wet signature of people and things of that nature.
Speaking of this law, when is this law going to come?
It's currently the draft has been agreed. It's been discussed with some of the key stakeholders, like we said, our brethren at the Central Bank of Egypt, NTRA, and the MLCU. We've sent it. It's currently being reviewed in the Prime Ministry level, and then it's going to be introduced to the. If everything goes well. I'm assuming the cycle typically takes a few months, okay? But it's actually we chose to write it more in the form of, because we know the process is quite inundating and time consuming. We wanted to be as flexible as possible, so we wrote it more in the form of a framework, where we've identified some of the key ingredients that will be there in common, and the board of the FRA will put the necessary rules and regulations that are going to govern that. We kept the window open for whatever non-banking financial services that eventually we may agree as non-banking financial services, that the board of directors will have the ability to come up with the rules and regulations for that as well. So while we may not have said, for example, that ROSCA or peer-to-peer lending or any other new form of financial services is currently identified, but once it is, the common regulations for all non-banking financial services going to kick in, which actually is a little bit aligned with the background of the FRA, because you probably, I don't know if all the participants know, but some of you, and especially the old-timers in the financial industry, the FRA was put together 10 years ago. Yep. in a merge between the different regulatory non-banking financial services regulators, the insurance, the mortgage lending industry, as well as the capital market industry. So putting them all together in one, and with the new evolution of other non-banking, specialized non-banking financial services in the lending, leasing, factoring, and so on and so forth, which have the gray or direct, I would say, alternative for the banking lending services. This all allowed for the regulations to cross-pollinate, but at their origins are still different laws that were written from different time frames. So one of the biggest challenges we had was, if we go fix or try to change each and every law by itself, it's going to take a lot of time and effort. So we tried to put in this NBFS, non-banking financial services technology law, tech law, to allow us to make the necessary changes or amendments or complementing what's already there, as opposed to go to each and every regulation and make a change in it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We have a question for Ahmed Wadi. It says, your business is mainly about money. So how did you deal with the Egyptian regulation on this part? And where are you planning to expand to? What are the regions or countries?
Yeah, unmute yourself, Wadi.
Sorry, guys. I think, yeah, so all fintechs is about money at the end of the day. So they all need to, at some point, probably be regulated by one of the regulators. At first, it was actually quite a challenge itself. So just to know which regulator we would actually fall under. And that's why we had to approach both initially, and then, you know, as we studied it together, we started to understand where would this specific model fall under eventually, and it was sort of concluded in a way. But at the end of the day, like Dr. Tariq said, sometimes there could be two regulators. So it's the same it's the same effort at the end of the day. But eventually, I think once both regulators would get fintech law, until then, we can actually be working with both at the end of the day. So, yeah. So, which question was it again? Sorry. What was the other part of the question?
It was, where do you plan on expanding to?
So I think we're currently like thinking of a country that has very a similar culture, big market population of especially offline roskers and so on. I think Africa is one of the biggest opportunities for us, and that's where exactly in Africa. This is something we're still like studying, but I think there's a lot of places that this model can actually really boom and scale at. So yeah, so where next would probably be Africa. Where exactly in Africa? We're still like studying that, and hopefully by mid 2021 would reach a conclusion.
Best of luck.
Thank you.
Another question is, how does the Egyptian fintech balance regulation versus the need to innovate and be creative? There are many rules that stifle innovation. So it's balancing regulation versus the need to innovate and be creative. I don't know, Zuhairi, do you have?
So I think, so from our experience, I mean, I think it's very, very important to really validate the product initially. So this should probably be the main focus. It's not really, because at some point you might pivot a lot. At the end of the day, you can actually, by the end of those pivots, you can probably fall under a separate product or a new product. So if you seek, I mean, initially as a start, if it's still, everything's still unclear, I think understanding and finalizing at least, you know, the product and the roadmap, I think this is something then that will help really like, you know, understand which regulator you would fall under and start the process of. But without a clear understanding of the product at a very early stage, I think it could actually be a waste of time just to understand where or which product is it exactly that you want to regulate.
Yeah, actually, I would echo that. Actually, it depends on the vertical you're working in within fintech and whether, I mean, it wouldn't make sense to make a venture based on open banking where you know you're not there yet from a regulatory perspective. So it doesn't make sense then. So it all depends. However, I believe that within the current regulatory framework, fintechs can still work through them. It's not, let's be very clear, if you're into fintech, it's not it wouldn't be an easy ride. But again, I would say like being in fintech today is much, much better than being there like 4 or 5 years ago. So again, it depends on the vertical you're working in, it depends on the type of regulator you need.
I'm going to ask that question to Mahmoud Nasharti, since they are in the privileged position of having all the licenses the central bank can offer, right? So I know that under new management, Bank Masr, they have been pushing for innovation and digitizing all as a core philosophy, digitizing all the banks' operations as much as they can. So, what about your internal innovation as Bank Masr, and how does that fit in with your strategy? Where do you see the things that you're digitizing the most? And what is this about you guys launching a digital bank?
Okay.
And why?
I would like to comment on what Wadi and Zohair said first. Actually, as they said, of course, I totally agree that you have to know the basics of the regulation. However, the role of the fintech is to think out of the box and focusing on the product itself. Then we as banks, whenever we partner with the fintech, we go for the central bank to say, hey, we have this innovative idea and we want to, can comply with the regulation in a way or another. Going for your question, Annie, for the digital part of our processes and the product, it all starts with the basic product that we currently have on the accounting, how we can have opening the account, then we start to digitalize the branch, how to have a transformation on the branch level. So whenever the customer is entering the branch, he can subscribe across any service that he wants just in one click. without going for signing lots of paper, etc., etc., etc. Then Bank Mr. strategically start to build the digital factory where you can have digital product and enhance the existing one, and going further for what's expected in the market. How do we see the innovation or the growth in the market? Then how we can give them a tailored product, such like online banking, the experience, and enhance the number of clicks inside the online banking, etc. Going for the part of the digital bank, it's a long story that we cannot say it now. However, what we can say, future-wise, there will be lots of people, youth and consumers, want to deal with the physical people. They just wanted to deal with a mobile application, opening a bank, CDs, doing everything from a mobile application without visiting a branch. So this is, on a high level, the main objective of having a digital bank.
So what is the main objective of having a digital bank is what exactly?
Is the customer can do any service, any banking service, without visiting a branch. So he can subscribe, he can create the bank account, he can do CDs, or he can do saving accounts or whatever through a mobile application or through a digital service. This is the main and the key objective of this.
And how far are you to that as Bankamus?
Very soon, this is what we can say for now. Yeah.
You'll invite us all to the grand opening of that service?
Of course, at least we took the license now, and inside the bank, we're working on this.
Did you have to pay for the license?
I don't have the answer of this question now.
Because by the way, everybody, that was one of the questions, right? Digital banking, right? You're the ones who are going to launch it first. Everybody's looking to you for as a leader in this. So yeah. That's why it's great having you here, because we can better understand. People are asking. They're asking me. There's a question for me. Do you think fintech startups can compete with established banks? And my answer is, yeah, of course. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here. And by the way, for the person who asked this question, you have the perfect answer that one of the largest banks in Egypt is actually going digital. So they obviously believe you can compete with them in the digital space, and that's why they want to be there first. So I think that's the short answer to your question. But thank you for sharing that. And we really look forward. I think all of us in the fintech space will benefit from Bankmaster's experiences and pioneering that space. Good luck.
Thank you.
Thanks. On Bankmaster, we do have a question. Would you be open to work with startups via APIs? Where they can do Bankmaster?
If I'm not mistaken, if I got the question well, which is the API integration for this, yes, we're working on this, and we have a special digital team, which is the digital factory team. They are working on that matter part.
Excellent, thank you. So another question, but on the investment side. So what segments of fintech are you looking at now? And what are the hottest segments going to be in the next few years? So myself, Zohairi, Hani.
Honestly, the one segment I'd probably be not looking at least now in Egypt, is the payment space. It's sort of getting crowded. Yes, there is a big market, but there are big players in the market. So it wouldn't make sense for me as an investor to bet on the fourth or fifth or sixth player, unless he has something very differentiated or something very different than the others. Because for the payments, it's a margins game. It's a volumes game, actually. It's a very low margin industry with high volumes. So it wouldn't make sense if you can't acquire and compete with the other well-funded players in the market. So this is what I would probably be not looking at the moment.
Okay, so you're not looking at that. What are you looking at?
I would say different types of lending, especially when it comes to the non-banking financial services side. SME lending is the one that is very interesting. Then different products like factoring and reverse factoring in this. I would say InsurTech, prop tech, we're not there yet, but I think someone will make it. That's about it in general. This is what we're looking at the moment, actually. It's more of the peer-to-peer transactions. Crowdfunding, yes, when it's allowed for, when the regulations open up, and I know it's happening soon. So mostly I would say different kinds of lending and being able to offer sort of a balance sheet by the backing of EIB to startups.
Okay. I have a similar, personally, I have a similar view. I still think there is something left in payments. I think it's not all said and done. But our job is not to preempt the market. Our job is to partner with entrepreneurs. So usually we look to see what the entrepreneurs are working on as a guide to what they feel are the needs of the fintech market in general, and especially in fintech, which is so broad, probably one of the broadest regulated markets there are, because it covers the non-financial services and the financial services. It's something that we keep a very, very open mind to, right? I'd like to listen to anybody pitching anything, because that's really the core of what we do. We're not here to preempt the market. We're here to partner with great ideas that we can help them grow. So, as I said, I keep an open mind and would listen to anything.
This is an interesting question. So, for blockchain here, how the regulators, how are they going to deal with it? I mean, is a lot of the interbank transactions happen over blockchain.
Well, what's that about blockchain?
So it's relation to fintech, and how will the regulations authorities, how will they deal with that?
All right.
Okay, I can take a shot at that one. Okay, so the use of digital ledger technologies or blockchain is seen as a potential threat or replacement or alternative to the centralized based regulators, because it can, if the laws are going to permit it, it's simply just a distributed way of having a public ledger. I'll give you one of the examples. Any of the regulators are meant to keep a registry of who are the authorized service providers in a particular industry, and this registration or registrar function is currently centralized, and the law says the FRA is responsible for it. The use of technology and having this distributed among all the quote-unquote non-banking financial services participants, and it's distributed among different nodes, is just, for me, geography. So at the end of the day, it's the laws that are going to make it happen or not happen. Is it a potential threat to the traditional models? I don't necessarily, quite honestly, see it that way, although it has the potential. But at the end of the day, a lot of the established financial service providers and regulators can adopt this technology and can use this technology as well. So the issue is not the technology. The issue is the regulation or the legislation is going to allow it to exist, and whether or not people are going to trust it as an alternative to the centralized or the traditional registrar. So there are definitely advantages, technological advantages in the use of this technology in general, but I don't necessarily see it as a major threat, but it can be a threat.
Okay. I wish somebody from the CBE was here, so they can answer it from the CBE perspective as well.
Yeah, thank you, Tariq.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hani. A question for Banca Misra again. Your digital initiatives, what are the security risks associated with a digital bank?
Well, I was a little bit afraid from this panel because I know that the focus will be on the digital bank part.
Really?
So this make me...
No.
So what I can say briefly in that matter, the central bank, whenever is licensing anything, it gives security and risks that is associated with it. So we don't take the license unless they are adding the controls or saying that this is the guidelines or the security things that you have to follow. And definitely before going live, this will be applied. So this is what I can say for now.
Okay.
Okay, we have many questions. I'm not sure we'll be able to get through all of them, sorry, but advice for someone who has a fintech idea, where to start?
Where to apply to?
So,
well, you have Flat6 Labs here. You have the Egypt Ventures, EFG, not present on this phone call. There's the AUC Startup Lab, which has a fintech component. You have a host of mentors and people who can help you get it off the ground. Just start. I mean, the only thing, anybody who says just start, and there are enough people in this country to help you take it to the next level. If you have something worthwhile, but my advice is just start and just,
we started at Flat6 Labs. So.
You started in London before Flat6 Labs. Come on, even I know that, right? There are so many places to start. Just start, and you have at least two fintech specific ones. And I know Flat6 Labs are doing one that's focused in Saudi as well, so they'll have the expertise to help you with fintech regionally. So just start, please. And if you can hit up anybody on the panel for any questions or anything after this, just don't be shy. We're all here to help.
100%.
I would like to just pitch in on this one. We've actually, with the CBE and with the NTRA and the AML-CFT control unit in Egypt, we've put together a framework that is currently, I mean, you guys could go to the Fintech Egypt website and you can see that we have in the back end of that a panel of members from the different regulators that you can tap into or send questions, and they will be looked at. Of course, probably not at the very initial ideation phases. You're probably well off when you go to the specialized venture incubators and the venture capitalists and things like that. But eventually, when the ideas are solid and you want to find out what's happening from a regulatory perspective, we have a sort of a system or a workflow where we can get questions and have answers looked into by a committee and get answers back to you. We can schedule meetings where you can present your business model and get feedback. We also, the regulatory sandbox is something that the first cohort was focused on the KYC. The second one is a little bit open, and different ideas can be introduced into it. So there's a lot of, if you want to start, just start. There's a lot of people to help.
Oh, hello?
Hello.
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, everybody.
Okay.
Albert just froze.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and
So we lost Albert. I don't know why, but so we have all the questions until Albert comes back. Does anybody have an opinion on Bitcoin? There was a question about Bitcoin. Mahmoud, what's your view on Bitcoin?
Yeah, actually, yeah, please go ahead.
من بنك يعني.
Oh.
Does Bank Masr accept Bitcoin deposits? Will Bank Masr go into Bitcoins?
Bitcoin, at the end of the day, it's just an evolution of a digital currency that's happening. From Egyptian or from central bank perspective, for the time being, this is not regulated in the Egyptian market. So are we accepting Bitcoin? No, the question is.
Okay. So it's a function of if and when the central bank approves it, then you may be willing to accept it, like dollars or. Okay. There are questions. Banking industry sense. Okay. I think this question, I'll since the central bank is not here to talk about inclusion, somebody posted a question about 50 million unbanked or unserviced. Does anybody have an opinion on how to serve them? What can we collectively do to reach those unbanked?
I think those people need.
Technical.
Where's Albert?
Yeah, Albert, I just filled in for a bit. We're talking about the question related to the unbanked, and Wedi was going to mention something, right?
Yeah, so I think the most important thing is for them to see a use case they actually relate to and is able to conveniently use. Yeah, so I think we are able to sort of target a lot of those types of or that segment in general. We have to tweak a little bit of the onboarding process and the payout process, but at the end of the day, we're lucky to see them relate to this specific use case, and we're lucky to see excitement from that type of segment for this type of model. Yeah, so I think use cases is quite important, but there's definitely a lot to do when it comes to reaching out those people, onboarding them, and then slowly trying to onboard them into the formal financial system. So in our case, we onboard people via Fawry or any of those payment aggregators in general. But when it's time to receive the payout, we make sure that they receive it digitally. Yeah. So in this sense, the next time they join a circle, the ideal scenario for us is to actually pay using that digital solution eventually. So I think this could possibly help in the financial inclusion of these unbanked population in general, and similar with all other use cases they can relate to.
So use cases is one thing, which leads us, or at least for me personally, leads me to the FRA. The biggest financial inclusion product has been microfinance, right? The expansion of credit via microfinance has been. How many people now have microfinance? What's the total population of people who utilize microfinance in Egypt, Tariq? You're getting the book? Is it in the book?
Yeah, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I can tell you they're actually, it's one of the biggest growing market segments I think the law was introduced back in 2016. I'm not sure if it was 14 or 16, but
Yeah.
it's been picking up, because I wouldn't call it a fintech. It's definitely a non-banking financial service innovation and new products and ways of partnering with the NGOs to try to extend the reach. And even we just came up earlier this year with I think what was coined I don't know if it was called Pico Finance or something, whatever was smaller than microfinance.
Nano lending, probably.
Nano finance. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you crossed the 10 million mark yet?
I'll get you the numbers as we're speaking, but definitely the use of technology and or fintechs and trying to reach out to the untapped or the financial inclusion is definitely where the regulator is going to assist and help. And because quite honestly, most of the incumbents, I mean, if we go back to the question that was answered or addressed a few minutes ago, what are the strategies the fintechs could have at a very high level? If a fintech wants to think of a strategy to get into the market, you will do one of three things. You will either go for an untapped market, and people who are not there yet, or the traditional incumbents are not really paying attention to. And this is something that if you look at it from am I breaking the law or a regulation, or the risk there is going to be very small, and most of the time the regulator is going to help because it's part of the regulator's job to grow this market. So if you help the regulator do that, this is where it's a win-win situation. If you go in, another approach is you go in and you look what the incumbents are trying to do and see if you can help them do it better, become a channel for them, do something for them using the digital technology, and partner with them, become their agent, become their contractor, whatever you want to call it. And that's another approach. And the third one is if you actually know you're going to compete head on with them, and you're going to take their customer base. So these are three very high level different approaches to go to market. My advice for anybody who has an idea is to approach the first one. Try to create the value in an untapped market segment and try to get people on board and take the lead there. It's tougher, it's harder, but it's easier barriers to entry when it comes from a regulatory perspective and maybe competitive perspective. As you go in and mature and find a value proposition, you can go and find a technology where you can offer it and partner with some of the incumbents and help them transform themselves. If you're looking to compete and go head to head, this is going to be toughest and it will be most scrutinized. That's at a very high level. The actual numbers for the microfinance back in these numbers are we're talking about 6 billion to 15 billion Egyptian pounds. We're talking about the non-banking financial services, I would say registered in our database have exceeded 1,200 outlets, if you want to call it, جمعيات and companies and so on and so forth, with a lot of geographical reach. And the number of, back in 2018, it was approximately 2 million. So my guess right now is going to be probably close to 5.
All right. 5 million people that are included but probably have no bank accounts.
Exactly. Included but no bank accounts. But the problem right now is that they're not necessarily included digitally. So finding a solution to help a lot of these microfinancing NGOs who don't have the physical infrastructure but have the license to offer the services, and helping them with their back office operations and the bookkeeping and so on and so forth. This is definitely a big opportunity for some of the fintechs.
All right. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
You're the boss.
Thank you,
now,
everyone. Yeah, I think it's time to wrap up. Thank you to all the panelists for all your input and making this such an engaging panel. To all our attendees, thank you very much for being here. Please tune in to our next Start Smart webinar series. If you follow the Flat Six Labs social media channels, there will be announcements exactly when the next one is. It's next week. So please follow us on social media to find out more.
Okay. Thank
you very much, Albert.
Thank you, Albert.
Thank you
for doing this.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.